I'm Jessica Swencki with Brunswick County Schools, and I'm the Executive Director of Quality Assurance and Community Engagement. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about our Quality Assurance Review rubric and how we got there and why we use it in our county and what it's doing for us. So about 8 years ago, Brunswick County Schools decided to engage in district accreditation through Advanced Ed. And one of those required actions at the end of that very first accreditation was that we had to develop a system by which we monitored the quality standards in all of our schools. And one of the ways that we approached that was to basically recreate the quality assurance process annually in each of our schools. I say that because this has been an 8-year journey. So the rubric that you have in front of you, which really focuses now on just Standard 3, which is teaching and assessing for learning, is the result of an evolution of 8 years of trial and error and really thinking about what can be the best and most beneficial thing for feedback for our schools. So we 4 years ago, we started really thinking about school improvement initiatives in the system. And Max Thompson, who is with Learning Focused, came in and worked with our schools. And one of the things that we recognized we were missing was a real strong instructional focus at each of our schools. We were doing lots of good things, but we were not truly focused. We also were not focused on what the research and evidence-based practices actually were, and making sure that those were blended into our schools. So we were continuing to use what is known as basically a walkthrough process in our school. It has been part of the QAR process now for 8 years, but we began to refine it 4 years ago. And last year, we decided to actually turn our walkthrough process into a standardized rubric. So what we know about rubrics is that they can be great for not only students, but for teachers and administrators. And we were seeing in our walkthrough process that we were engaged in that even though we were looking at major categories like vocabulary and active engagement of the learner, what that meant to me as I was walking through and taking these snapshots probably was not the same operational definition for my teammate. And so the rubric actually came about because we felt like it would be better to operationalize what does the research actually say? What would be an operational best practice when we're talking about each of the sections that are now contained within the rubric? So it has helped us to really make sure that we're all talking the same language. We feel like the rubric has been normed. Last year we actually went, because we actually went through after each QAR session, which I'll talk a little bit more about, and we got feedback on how did the rubric work, where did it need to be refined. And so what you have actually is the refined 2015-16 rubric, and we are very, very pleased with the results that we've had working with our principals and our teachers to make those refinements. So who was involved in the development of the rubric, and what resources did we use? We actually have involved our teachers and our administrators in this process, and I think that's probably one of the most important factors. We want to make sure that our teachers understand that the reason we are using the rubric is because the rubric contains what we know are research-based and evidence-based practices. Our principals certainly are going to be using it as well, so we needed to have all of those people represented in the development of the rubric. We utilize primarily the resources from Learning Focused, which again are research-based and evidence-based practices, huge body of research behind them, so we feel confident that if we are implementing the high levels, 3s and 4s on the rubric consistently, that we're going to see some results in our classrooms. So those are primarily the resources that we used. We also have worked for several years with Dr. Mark LaFrance from East Carolina University, and that work is really referenced in the student engagement portion of the rubric. So how is it used in our district? Well, there are two actual ways that the rubric is used. The first is that all of our schools, through the school improvement process, have an instructional focus, and that's really critical. And the instructional focus areas really are those best research and evidence-based practices that are in the rubric. So the rubric is used in two different ways. The first piece, I think, is important to say what it is not, how it is not used. It is not used as an evaluation tool. It is used as a snapshot tool. Every time the rubrics are utilized in a school, they are used probably 5, maybe 6 minutes tops. They are one snapshot in a much bigger picture album. So each of our schools do have a walkthrough process that they are using in their schools. We have 19 schools, so all schools are at a bit of a different place. Some schools use the entire rubric in their internal walkthrough process. Some actually just extrapolate certain portions of the rubric to focus on. Some have a new focus each 9 weeks. Some actually, because of where they are in the development of their instructional focus, will stay with that same one section for the entire year. So schools use it as an integral part of their internal walkthrough process to take snapshots and then to use that information to inform instructional decisions. At the district level, we use it as well to provide the school a snapshot, but our snapshot is an external snapshot. It's one moment in time, and it's intended to be a comparison point to the data that the school is already collecting. What we find is that schools that are really actively engaged in the walkthrough process find more meaning out of the district snapshot. We do have 19 schools, and we conduct a quality assurance review in all 19 schools one time a year. The teams are actually made up of administrators, principals, assistant principals, and this year, because of the popularity and the importance that teachers have stated as far as their own professional development through this process, we actually have 5 teachers that join each team. That has increased over the last 2 years. We also believe that truly having the teachers engaged in the external walkthrough process with another school has just done tremendous things to help build a common language about what the research-based and evidence-based practices are. I like to refer to it as cross-pollination in our schools because we really are taking great ideas from one building and moving them back into the buildings where the teachers have joined us. So that has been a very positive part of this process for our system. So we go in as an external review team with our team members. We conduct the snapshots. We confer and reach consensus as small groups. We do break into teams. We go and we visit every classroom in the school, and we apply the rubric. Will we see every piece of the rubric while we do the snapshot? Absolutely not. Again, it's not evaluative. It is just taking a picture for that one moment in time of what the instructional practices are, and then we come to consensus on what that looks like in that classroom. At the end of the day, all of that information is actually tallied. So we leave the school with a quantifiable, measurable, this is where you rated today in this moment in time with regard to each of the sections within the rubric. We hope that the school will have enough of their own data at that point from their own walkthroughs to be able to make a comparison point. The idea behind it is that we will be able to, over time, determine patterns, establish some different practices, and hopefully over time see our practices become more consistent in the 3 and 4 areas within the rubric. I think what you'll see within the rubric is that these are just great, solid teaching practices. It does not matter what your subject area is or your core, whether or not you are a specials teacher or a content area teacher. These are good, solid teaching practices, and these are the practices that we really do want to see teachers really try to incorporate in their day-to-day lesson instruction design. And we also think the other part of this entire process for us is just really a conversation about intentionality, making sure that we are intentionally choosing to utilize the research-validated practices, those evidence-based practices. The rubric is really a roadmap to excellence as far as instructional design. And we believe that equipping people with this information will help raise awareness and also help to build that intentionality piece. So throughout the district, one of the things that we try to do is we cannot be afraid of of conversations about instructional improvement. We are a system that is committed to instructional improvement and continuous improvement. And so the conversations about where we are as a system related to the rubric and the quantifiable information that we can gather from these snapshots really does help to paint a picture. We have spent a lot of time, and we are now seeing that those things are in the bricks of our schools, but we now are seeing places where we need to turn and focus our attention. So we believe that the rubric is really the roadmap to excellence in teaching and instructional design. And our goal is that we use it intentionally, and we have conversations that inform our instructional decisions and help to guide our professional learning communities. Overall, the impact in our district, we are at, again, it's an evolutionary process, but I would say that as of 2015-16, this is the very best that we have done at this point. We're very happy about moving forward with the new revised rubric that you have. We're excited to see how the information will continue to transpire in our system. I think overall the impact is that we have started to have meaningful conversations about what research says works. One of our principals shared with their staff when they presented the rubric that, this is really the roadmap. It's not rocket science. If you focus on doing things consistently and intentionally in the level 3 and 4 areas, you will see results. Your students will perform better. Our school will overall improve. And then, therefore, our district will improve. We have had deeper and richer conversations about instruction and instructional design. And I truly believe that the cross-pollination concept, we are getting into each other's spaces, into each other's buildings, and we're developing relationships across our county. The process that we have engaged in, even though it has taken us, 8 feel that it's not evaluative because it was never intended to be. And so I think that that's really important for districts who are thinking about how they could possibly implement something like this. It's important to get people to the table to talk about the why behind it. It's important to recognize that when we are in each other's spaces and we're talking about teaching and learning, that's truly the most powerful professional learning opportunities that we can provide our teachers. And then ultimately, to continue those conversations and to continue to build those relationships as we really ground ourselves in what really works in classrooms. These things work. We are believers in Brunswick County Schools.